Are dividends irrelevant? Yes, I know, that's very exciting, but really, stick around because a lot of times our view on dividends can be skewed as to what they really are.
All thoughts and opinions shared in this recording belong to the participants. This is meant to inform and educate and should not be seen as solicitation or endorsement for business.
To start, I want to explain what a dividend is so that we can all be on the same page. A dividend is a company distributing its profits to its owners. Say a company earns $1 million in a year. When they have that cash in hand, they have two basic options: keep it in the business or distribute to the owners of the company. Either way, the owners of the company benefit from the $1 million. Let's say, as an example, the company owners decide to use the $1 million to pay down debt. That means that then the company is worth $1 million more in value because they don't owe $1 million to the bank or to their debt and creditors. The owner's value in the company rose by $1 million, but they were not paid $1 million. They just received that in the price or value of their company. On the other hand, the company could distribute the $1 million to their owners. When the owners receive that, they have $1 million in hand, but the company is no longer worth that extra $1 million more because the company actually paid that out to the owners. This happens in the stock market. Go watch a company's price when they pay out a dividend. When the dividend is paid, the stock price actually goes down by the amount of the dividend paid. Let me say that again so you don't miss it. When a stock that you own pays a dividend, the price of the stock goes down by the dividend that is paid by the company. This is the case around the dividend irrelevance theory. The theory suggests that dividends should not be a decision factor while choosing companies to invest in. If a company pays a dividend or not, the value that the owner should receive should be the same. The paper that is often referenced around this topic is written by Merton and Franco Modigliani, written in 1961. Both Merton and Franco are Nobel Prize-winning economists who have made large contributions to the corporate finance space. Their argument is that whether a company pays a dividend or not, the owners will receive an economic value just as I've described, by either a rise in value of the company or a dividend received in hand. In theory, there should not be a difference between these two. When, for the most part, this is true, there are several assumptions that are made in the paper that don't necessarily hold true in the actual or real world. The first is that there are no taxes or transaction cost of a dividend or capital gain in their paper, when really there are tax implications for dividends, and there are sometimes transaction costs for buying and selling a stock, although that is getting cheaper and cheaper by the day. In America, qualified dividends are taxed at similar rates to capital gains, although there could be some advantage to being able to time when you pay those capital gains from a personal perspective. With dividends, you aren't able to choose when you receive them. So it's like forcing annual taxes to be paid instead of selecting when you capture a capital gain or sell a stock. The second assumption is that markets are fairly priced and that dividend policy does not affect the price of a company. This is an entirely different topic around market efficiency that I really don't have time to discuss today. Basically, they assume that there's no chance for market manipulation or changes outside of the true value of companies. And there are several more reasons that they made, but they become more and more technical than I would really like to go in this video. So let's talk about some of the downsides to dividend investing. The first and largest, in my opinion, is that you silo yourself to one specific sector of the market. There are thousands of companies that you could invest into in the stock market, and of those companies, roughly half of them pay a dividend. That means that if you declare yourself a dividend investor, you basically automatically cut out half of the stock market as a potential investment. A good example of this would be Berkshire Hathaway, which I did a video on and will place that here. They have not and do not pay a dividend. However, they have been an amazing long-term hold for investors and have proven time and time again that they're ran by a good management. And they have proven that in their stock appreciation. A dividend investor wouldn't be allowed to purchase this because of the rules that they set on themselves to only buy dividend stocks. The second is that dividends force you to pay taxes if you hold them in a taxable account. If an investor holds a dividend stock in a taxable brokerage account, they're basically guaranteed to have taxable income this year that can either be taxed at their income rates or capital gains rates if the stock meets the criteria of being a qualified dividend. If you want to hold international stocks, that typically means that the dividend is going to be taxed at your ordinary income rates, which can also lead to a bias to only holding domestic stocks instead of international stocks. The third is that once a dividend is paid, you actually have to go do something with it. You are forced consistently to make a decision whether you would like to spend the dividend, reinvest into the same company that paid the dividend, or reinvest into different companies. That, in and of itself, can be a headache and may be a pain point for the lazy investors out there, which I would include myself in that category. However, many people still like dividends, and there are some positives to dividend investing. Most of the positives, in my opinion, are psychology-based. For most people, it is much easier to enjoy investing when you see a return of your capital more so than it is by just watching the growth in the stock price. There's a euphoric feeling when a dividend is paid, and you did nothing to work for it. You just owned a stock, and it paid you money just for owning it. This can oftentimes create a much easier investing experience for people and sometimes allow people to stay invested no matter if the stock is rising or falling in price. If dividends are able to help an investor stay invested through turbulent times in the stock market, it's probably well worth the investment into something like a dividend stock. The second is you're buying companies that are at least stable enough to commit to a dividend. If a company is just starting out, they likely are not going to be paying a dividend because they're investing most of their proceeds back into the company or to pay down debt that they use to fund the business. Because of this, when a company is paying a dividend, a consistent dividend at least, it can oftentimes be an indicator of maturity in the business cycle. This is not true every time, but it can be true in aggregate. In summary, there's a lot of other factors that should be considered before purchasing a stock. Simply saying or stating that a company pays a dividend and therefore I should invest into it is not an investment philosophy that I would recommend. There are plenty of very well-run companies that pay a dividend, but there are also plenty of poorly ran companies that pay a dividend. However, finding an investment philosophy that works for you and setting your own guidelines around that philosophy can greatly and tremendously benefit you. And if dividends are the way that you can stay invested through any market cycle, then maybe that is the way to go. Thank you for joining us on this week's Data Brief. If you enjoyed this video, I have more just like it. You can click here.